Hi, my name is Troy Kemp, and I'm the CEO of Prep Public Schools, but I'm here at Chatt Prep, ready to share with you some really amazing things. We're going to do some awesome things with the guys this year, but one thing that we're going to do that's going to change the game, because I've seen it work in schools all around the country, is implement a house system. And a lot of people, when they think about house system, they think about Harry Potter and all those things. But I'm here to talk to you tonight about why it's important and why it works, why it's essential, not optional. So I'll get right to it. Y'all, here's the deal. This is true. The worst sin towards someone is not to hate them, but to ignore them. It is worse to ignore somebody than hate them. You could just think about when you was a child, that's really true. Somebody didn't even pay attention. You wouldn't even worth their time to even hate. Well, it's really interesting because the opposite of that, the best thing you could do for someone is to see them and understand them. Is to really see them and understand them. Ain't nothing worse than being misunderstood because you'll be mismanaged most of the time. So for these young men, a lot of times they sit back in the back, but they don't say nothing, but they still need what everybody else needs. They just won't let you know. So I'm gonna share with you a quick story. So I was in Kingston, Jamaica. So I go to Kingston, Jamaica. I was the executive director of the National Center for the Development of Boys. So that meant I went around talking to parents and educators and police, all members of the community about how to reach and teach boys. So I studied this with all the things I did. Spent 30 years reaching and teaching boys myself. So anyway, I go to Kingston, Jamaica, and I'm gonna speak to the nation, the schools and the teachers, all the people about reaching and teaching boys. And all of a sudden, a gentleman comes to me and says, Mr. Kemp, I have a special assignment for you. I have a group of boys, 50 boys in this country that have been abused, abandoned, neglected, and left for nothing. And what we know about these boys, if someone doesn't do something with these boys, very soon they're gonna take some lives. They always do. Mr. Kemp, while you're in our country, can you spend time with these boys? Can you spend an hour? And of course, I couldn't say no, but I was almost terrified because I was like, wow, these boys are 13 to 17 years old, and they're the guys that nobody wants to see. All they feel is pain every day, and all they do is give it out too. So I said, all right, I got you. So I had to come up with a strategy. So I go in the room, and I turn on some music, and I put a list of things about me, 10 things about me on the board. And I said, I gave you a piece of paper and a pencil, all of them. I said, I want you to circle the numbers or write down the numbers of what you think is true about me. Now, y'all have to understand, kids that have been through a lot, they're gonna judge you right now as soon as you walk in the door. A lot of kids, when their teachers leave and you turn over principals, they're like, you're just another person who's gonna leave, so I don't really know who you are. So I said, I'm gonna give them something right now about me, and they gotta figure out what's true. So the first one was I a professional athlete? It says Troy Kemp was a professional athlete. Of course, when they finished, I turned on a little music, I let them write on their pads, and then I said, first one, false. They were like, oh. And then I had another thing about me, and I said, second one, true. They're like, yeah. Third one, true, yeah. Oh, yeah, oh. These boys were not talking, but they were involved. They were engaged. Boys are competitive. They want to know anyway. So the first thing I did is gave them something to work with. So now they realize some of those 10 things were tough, like I was homeless once. And that was tough, but they understood that, you know what, he may be like me. So they were now leaning in a little bit. They want to listen to me a little bit because they go, man, this man, he's been through some stuff too. So now they're squirming in their seats. Now I got them a little warm. I said, now I want to do something a little different. I gave them another piece of paper. I said, on one side, I want you to write a word that describes you on the outside, like strong, funny, handsome, those words that boys typically use. Now, on the other side of the piece of paper, I want you to write down an inside word, a word that describes you, but you ain't never gonna tell nobody, but they probably should know. Now, I'll give you some examples. So I put 25 outside words on this half of the board, and on this half, I put 25 inside words. And I said, you can choose one of these words for your outside, and you can choose one of these for your inside, but you can choose your own too. Now, I'm gonna give you my word. Outside, confident. Inside, sensitive. They were like, what? I said, yeah, so you write down your own word on both sides. And I said, now, I got this big old trash can. If you write on both sides of the paper, you can ball it up and shoot it in this trash can because I want to know what you said. But nobody's going to know what you wrote down now. Write your words down, cover it up, ball it up, shoot it. But you can't shoot in my can if you don't write on both sides. So, of course, they want to shoot in the can. So they're like, shoot, I'm writing down. So all of a sudden, they wrote down the words. So I collect the can, and I said, now I want to see what these boys wrote. So I wasn't worried about the outside word because everybody focuses on those. I wanted to know what they said on the inside. So I pull out a piece of paper. First word, hopeless. Second word, worthless. Next word, worthless. Next word, hopeless. Y'all, by the time I finished, I had 38 hopeless and 8 worthless. Y'all, it wasn't but 50 boys in the room. How did they pick the same word at the same time and they could have picked anything? That's because how they felt. But the interesting thing is they start moving around a little bit differently because they were like, wait a minute, I'm not the only one that feels like this. So it really is interesting, the thing that happens. Once you with people, it's kind of like, you know, when you were back in school and you got a bad test grade, what's the first thing you did? You went and walked around the room trying to find out who grades worse than yours because you wanted to find your people. Even if your people at the bottom, you got to be comfortable somewhere before you're comfortable everywhere. So what I learned pretty quickly with these boys was that it's just a matter of a human connection. They got to find something in common to feel safe. And once that happened, I got them to start answering questions and doing so forth, but they needed to find out, was it safe to move? So the real question is, do your kids always feel, do your sons always feel safe to be great, to raise their hand? Because most people, I can imagine every single person that I've known has been in class before, they knew the answer and they didn't raise their hand. And if you're at home right now, think about it, that could have been you too. I know I did. Why didn't you raise your hand? Because you didn't know the answer, or you knew the answer, or you were worried about what people thought about what you thought about. So again, we need to remove that in order for kids to be great. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do with the house system. Because at the end of the day, y'all, if you want to see this, kids are more hopeless than they've ever been before. This is girls, 57% girls and 29% of boys are actually hopeless, even though they're sitting right in your face enjoying themselves. One of the reasons why they play video games all day is that they can win somewhere. So what we're trying to figure out is a way for them to contribute in a meaningful and measurable way where they can be winners too, but you don't have to give it to them. So I'm going to share with you how we're going to do it. Y'all, because at school, everybody's talking about the curriculum. One thing I know about curriculum, it's like paint. If the surface ain't primed, it's not going to stick. You can do all the things you want to do, but if they ain't ready to learn and they don't trust you, it's a wrap. So how do we build trust to the point where these kids can move without friction, where they can be great without hesitation? That's what we're trying to do at Chatt Prep. I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but when I learned about it, I can't stop saying it. If you can say it at home real quick, say OODA loop. OODA loop. O-O-D-A. Every time you make a decision, every time your cell phone rings, OODA loop, you observe, it's my cell phone. You orient it. Oh, that's from Tommy. You decide, I don't like Tommy. You act, you put it back in your pocket. Doorbell rings. You observe, that's the doorbell. Orient yourself. Oh, it's over there. You decide, I ain't going to get it. You act, you tell your child to go get it. So again, OODA loop, every time you make a decision, a new person walks in the room, you get a text message. This is why it's important for the kids not to have phones in their pocket, because every time it rings, the OODA loop starts again and they got to restart. But here's the most important part about the OODA loop. Everybody observes, everybody orients, everybody decides, but some people are afraid to act because they're worried about what people are going to say, like not raising your hand. So what do? You create an environment where they're fearless. Kids don't always grow up being fearless, but you got to make an environment safe enough that they can move without fear. So how do you create where you flow freely? Y'all, if you don't, it's going to be like somebody going to a restaurant. You ever been in a restaurant with somebody who can't order? They just looking at the menu all day. You done came in there for breakfast, but you didn't order till dinner time because they haven't ordered yet. That's the OODA loop. When your computer gets stuck and it starts to spin that little ball, that's the OODA loop, y'all. So what do? We want to keep these kids out of this so they can act fearlessly, because that's how they're great. Even professional athletes are good on one team and terrible on the new team, or vice versa, because of doubt. So we got to leave no doubt at Chatt Prep. That's our goal. So here's the deal, y'all. We always talk about motivation, just so you know. When you motivate people, that's like adding fuel. I give you something that's going to motivate you. Well, just like a rocket, you can add all the fuel if you want, but if it's not shaped right, it's not going to launch. So the shape is to remove the friction. So it's fuel or friction. Fuel, I give you incentives, I give you points, I give you grades. Friction, I make sure that you trust me. See, friction is what prevents you from moving, y'all. People didn't raise their hand not because of fuel, they didn't raise their hand because of friction. They were worried. So how do we create an environment with a high level of trust and a high level of buy-in and a high sense of belonging? That's what this is. Y'all, I've seen so many kids soar to the highest of heights, and it wasn't because we incentivized them. It's because we created an environment where they left no doubt. So how do you do it? Y'all need to know this. Everybody needs to know this. The greatest predictor of success. You see that Robitussin right there? I put some Robitussin in there because it's like Robitussin for the soul. The number one predictor for success, y'all, is hope. When you are hopeful, and for the folks who spend time in the church and with their faith, hope. Folks, hope is about your vision, not about your sight. Hope is about what you believe, not what you can see. So one of the things that happens when you're hopeful, you keep walking, you keep moving, you keep trying. You're not worried about failing. When you have hope, longer life, less pain, less stress, less anxiety, less depression, more productivity, better at problem solving. I don't know anybody in the world who doesn't want this Robitussin. And guess what? There's a way to get to it. And I'm going to show you quickly. This is what we're going to do with our boys at Chatt Prep. I'm so excited. I'm about to come through that camera right now, y'all. Look, I'm a psychology guy. See, you can tell people about a lot of things, but I'm going to show you the reason why this is necessary. How do you get to hope? Folks, self-actualization, desire to become more than one can be, the best you can be, the most that you can be. That means I'm hopeful. I can reach the top. I can reach my potential. I can make a good grade. I can be a starter on a football team. I can go to college. Folks, in order to get to level 5, you got to get past level 1, 2, 3, and 4. And what a lot of people do, physiological needs, you feed them, you give them water, you give them shelter, they get sleep. Most parents, everybody knows that part. We do that. That's what we do. Then safety needs. You need personal security. You need employment, resources. If you don't have those, you're not going to be hopeful. That's true. But the one that most people forget is love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection. Folks, if kids don't have a sense of connection, they don't ever get to the point where they have respect and self-esteem. They don't do that because they feel like they don't belong. Research even shows that kids, when they go to college, if they're the first kid to go to college out of their family, sometimes they don't feel like they belong and they don't try as hard and they quit early. So it's essential, even at a place like Chatt Prep, where it's only high school and middle school, when they feel like they belong, they'll try harder, they'll stick with it, they'll move through it. Just like all of you great people that came back to this school, you felt like your kid belonged and they belong here, and so they will go through things that are challenging when that happens. So love and belonging. Folks, if they don't find it at school or in your household, in your community, they go to gangs and other things like that because they need it. A lot of young ladies end up in bad relationships because they need love and belonging. So the question is, if we put something here, if we fill that gap, they can get to the 4th and the 5th floor. So the house system is really about meeting this need, and I'll show you why real quickly. Folks, if you belong, you're literally like a glass of water. This is their child's ability to learn. Look at all that space. Well, when you don't belong, half of the space is filled with doubt. It's like ice in a drink. You can't fill a whole cup up. So when you belong, your capacity, you can get to a 10 versus get to a 5 right here. And one of the things that this shows, again, with college, this is research-based, y'all. I ain't making this up. People in college, when they feel confident about their academic ability, when they belong, when they feel like when they don't belong, it's the same student, but they feel like they don't belong and they don't try and they have doubt, and that OODA loop kicks in and they can't even answer a multiple choice question, y'all. This is facts. So we're not going to have that happen, because I'm going to tell you this. Membership plus connection equals trust. There's a chemical in your body called oxytocin. When you have that, you trust, you bond, you connect. One of the top ways to build oxytocin is membership. Fraternities, sororities, the military, people who are from the same country, people who see the same language, people who look similar. This is why people hang around a lot of times who speak the same language or look similar and play the same sport, because membership and connection. The military, they go through boot camp. Why? They take all these people from around the world and they put them through the same experience so they have membership and connection. Fraternities, sororities, membership. Pledging is just creating membership. Team building for schools and organizations, and that's just membership. It's just finding a way to raise the oxytocin, which raises the level of trust. Trust equals trying, y'all. High trust, they'll always try. Every child needs an environment where personal sacrifice contributes to the collective experience. They need a crew and a cause. I hope you can say it at home. Crew and a cause. That means they can contribute to something bigger than themselves in a measurable way. That's why community service and things like that is important as well. Watch this. Even at work, employees with a strong sense of belonging report a 56% increase. You do better at work, the teachers do better. So if you are somebody working somewhere and people are underperforming, maybe they don't feel like they belong in some way. So how do you build that connection? I'll give you a case in point. My son, I thought he was allergic to waking up, y'all. I used to get this joker to wake up for school every morning, and I would get tired of going to wake him up every morning. His alarm clock was waking me up. So finally I said, buddy, if you don't wake up tomorrow, I'm gonna throw this glass of water on you. And all I did is fill up a Dixie cup of water, put it next to his bed. And he's like, you're not gonna throw that water on me. I said, okay. So the next morning, that alarm goes off, I go over to his room. I'm not even mad, I'm actually happy. I grab that water, splash. He goes, Dad, what are you doing? Wake me up. You just soaked my bed. I said, first of all, you got that wrong. That's my bed. You didn't pay for anything. Then the second thing, well, you wet me up. I said, all I did was start your shower early, grab the soap and get up. Here's the point. My son, every day I was going through this with him. And then all of a sudden he moved into the dormitory because he was attending Macaulay School and we lived on campus. And I said, you want to live in the dorm? He said he wanted to live there his senior year. I was worried to death, y'all. I was worried that he wasn't going to wake up and he was going to fail out. My son woke up every day on time. I said, how did you wake up every day on time and I'm not over there to throw water on you? He said, that's easy, Dad. My roommate needed me to wake him up. When somebody needs you, y'all, your purpose is more powerful than any alarm clock. Ask yourself this. Does anybody need you? If you didn't show up with anybody, would it matter? With your son, does he feel that same way? Because if he doesn't, we got some Robitussin for him. And you if you need it. Because this is about parents too, not just your kids. Folks, when they feel like they're needed and they belong, they're going to buy in, they'll be more motivated, more sense of self, like I can get it done. If not, they'll be stressed, disengaged, less motivated, more likely to be absent, y'all. Here's the thing. I got boys that, you know how they dress, y'all. A lot of parents, man, we were like, Lord, please. When they walk out the door, some of the stuff they put on when they're on their street clothes, they got belts on around the middle of the thigh and pants not pulled up. And then if you put on a pair of Air Jordans, they're going to walk across the street. They'll get hit by a car trying to walk across the street because they can't move fast enough because their pants on, their belts around their thighs, and they got on some sneakers they don't want to crease. Y'all know what I'm talking about. But guess what? They'll show up in basketball, football, and soccer, tuck them all in, make them all perfect. They'll even wear a tie at Chatt Prep when they belong. So when they're bought in, you don't have to about arguing with them because they want to be a part of it. I'll give you a case in point. My son, I grew up in the church. You probably can't tell that. But anyway, my son is crying. He's on the floor in the bedroom, and my wife says, go get your son. He's my son now because he's crying. So I go in there and I try to figure out why he's crying. He's laying on the floor, it's choking me, it's choking me. I said, Dad, what's it choking me? I said, what's choking you? He said, Dad, this tie is choking me. I said, boy, it's a clip-on tie. How can it be choking you? And then I'm looking there and then I put my fingers in his neck like this and I figure out some space. I said, first of all, look at all that space you have in your neck. You can breathe, get up off the floor. You're the reason why we going to church in the first place. But it's an interesting thing. That Sunday, he's choking on a clip-on. 2 days later, he goes to Macaulay, which is all-boys school, wearing a tie. He gets up at 5 a.m. and he's running downstairs with a tie, a real tie. Dad, when are we going to put this tie on? Weren't you choking on a clip-on tie 2 days ago? He wanted to be a part of something bigger than himself. They will buy into the values, to the code, to the ethics, to the ethos when they belong. So the goal of these young men, we want them to rise, we want them to have high expectations, then we got to make sure they belong, and that's the process. My team, I took my team on a hotel. I ain't gonna lie to y'all. I took my team and we traveled. We used to travel to play against some of the best teams in the country because I wanted my kids to get recruited. So we wanted to play against some ranked teams. So we're on the hotel and we're getting ready to go play against a ranked team, and all of a sudden, I get to the hotel and then the manager comes to me after we ate dinner. He said, Mr. Kemp, I got a problem. I said, what kind of problem you have? He said, your boys are pushing all the buttons on the elevator. There's like 35 floors on this building and they keep making the elevator stop on every floor. They're playing games. And I said, all right, that's it. I made all the boys go out in the parking lot. And we get out in the parking lot. I made them get in the push-up position, just standing straight like a plank. And so they're standing on the ground. They're on the ground. Their arms are shaking. I said, you're going to stay down here until somebody tells me who did it. You're going to tell me. And those brothers are like, I ain't telling, I ain't telling. Next you know, this one kid raised his hand. He said, Coach, I did it. I said, that's it. Everybody back inside. You stay right here. So this young boy, I'm going to call him T. I said, Mr. T, you in trouble. That's what the T stands for. You know better to do this. You represent the school. And while I was talking to him like that, the rest of the team came back outside and they got on the ground and they got down with him. And they were like, we're going to stay here as long as he stays here. Now, when will you ever get a young man to do something that's beyond the level that's going to go do extra? They weren't required to come back outside, but they did it because they belonged, because they had a bond. And this is the kind of thing that young people do. This is why I tell parents, if their grades drop, don't take them off the team, just take them off the field. That coach has a lot of power. There are kids that won't read in the air conditioning, but they will chase a football in 95-degree heat. Well, coaches out there, why don't you get a book group? they'll read more. That's all I'm saying. Even, I was a math teacher, y'all. I was trying to get my math students to take better notes. But high school boys, I used to call, their notes were so horrible, I used to call it word salad. They were writing stuff all over the place. And I said, how can I get them to take better notes? Because I want them to be able to use them when they study. So guess what I did? I did this. First of all, I taught them the difference between taking notes and copying. I would need you to interpret what I'm saying. And then I created a sheet. It was called the class log. And every day a different boy was the official person to do the class log and take notes, official ones. Everybody else took their notes, but his notes were taken. And what I was going to do is take a copy of his notes and put them in a book so that if anyone missed class or anybody lost their notes, they could take that book and just photocopy it and use that for their notes. Guess what? These boys who couldn't even write straight were showing up with highlighters, markers, and all this stuff when it was their day because they took notes for someone else. They will do something when they care for somebody, when somebody's counting on them, they will always do it differently. That's the same thing as if when somebody's not counting on them, they may move differently. That's why they call it accountability. The last one I want to share with you is this, and this is important. So one of the coolest things about the house system at Chatt Prep is that we're going to eventually have screens like this one, and we'll have 6 houses. And each house has a logo. We'll send you information on that. It has a logo. It has a history. It has a chant, a cheer. And this is for parents too, because parents, you can buy house swag. Once your kid's in that house, you're in that house, that kind of thing. But we'll have banners up here, and basically each house accumulates points, and the points are accumulated for good character, great effort, academic excellence, attendance, things that we want the kids to do great at. If everybody walks across the main courtyard and then only one kid is standing back picking up trash, oh yeah, we have an app that we can give that child house points. And guess what? When we give him house points, we're taking photos of all of them. Their name and their face will pop up on their particular house, and their points will go up on their scoreboard. So now that child, everybody sees it. We're going to have one in the gym, one in the cafeteria, and one in the main building. So all the time you're going to see whose house is ahead. And we're going to have a house championship, and we're working on the prizes. We're going to get some of you parents to help us look at what do we award at the end of the year, or maybe even the end of the semester, which house is in front. The app will keep track of how many points each child gets. It'll keep track of who's the leader in each house. So we're going to have house meetings so that we can have little teams. Essentially, we're creating teams. Y'all, everybody doesn't play sports. Everybody doesn't play music, but they can all have a crew and a cause. And this has changed schools around the country. So again, each one of these guys will have their photo, and as we go through the year, the house leaders will change based on the number of points. And again, is that an incentive for guys to have perfect attendance? Yeah, because your house needs 10 points. It sure is. Show up, baby. Everybody's counting on you. So we're going to do things, make them a part of something bigger than themselves, and they rise, y'all. That's what I'm saying. And this is the extra. So one of the things that we're going to do is Fridays, we're going to do a lot more house celebrations. We're going to do some academic work, but half of the time we're going to do house competitions and things where they can earn points for their team. But every week we're going to recognize the student of the week for each house. So there'll be 6 houses. And then each kid will be nominated, and we'll get up and say something great about him. You know, Mr. Kemp, he showed up and he gave great effort all the time. He was on time to everything. He encouraged others. He helped tutor some kids, things like that. We're going to vote and nominate him to spin the wheel for our house. So we're going to get 6 different people to spin the wheel. And the houses are every grade, 6, 7, 8, 9 right now. We're going to move it to the high school probably in the 2nd semester if that's what the boys want. We know it works. But sometimes we got to make sure it's their idea instead of ours. You know what I'm talking about. But at the end of the day, we'll pick the person and they're going to spin this wheel. And when they spin this wheel, it's going to rotate around. And basically where this lands will give them points. We'll teach you how to read the wheel. They can get 15 extra points for their house if it lands here. Or they can say, hey, I got a down arrow. I'm going to go for the 2nd level. And they spin again. Maybe this time they get 30. Or I'm going to go down one more time. You can go all the way to the center where you can almost earn 100 points for your team. And you get to celebrate. So again, you don't have to be the biggest, the strongest, or the fastest. You just got to be great in the right ways. We're not just trying to raise a bunch of smart people. We want to raise great young men. And one thing that we know is when you measure what you treasure, they're more likely to do it better. Meaningful and measurable, that's the way. Crew and a cause, that's the way. Thank you for your time. Certainly, if you have questions, please reach out.